Hi kids. Hi kid. We're gonna explain some of the words in the first chapter of the 4th edition of Alcoholics Anonymous, the big book, and that's because it's these words are less and less accessible to the general population as time goes by. Some of the meanings are elusive to some of you kids, you youngsters. Whether I should read, I'm going to go ahead and read it through now. You might, some of this material you might know already, some of it you might only half know. So be patient for the sake of those who don't. Okay, chapter 1, Bill's story. War fever ran high in the New England town to which we new young officers from Plattsburgh, I believe that's in New York, were assigned. And we were flattered when the first citizens took us to their homes, making us feel heroic. Here was love, applause, war, moments sublime with intervals hilarious. Now sublime, the word sub in Latin means up to, and limen means the lintel, which is the cross piece on the top of a door. So up to the lintel. Moments up to the lintel? Well, it's associated with a feeling of rising towards heaven. It's like a state of consciousness. I believe you understand the concept of having a high or low state of consciousness. So up to the lintel means as if you were rising towards heaven in your state of consciousness. Intervals hilarious. Inter means between, and valum means wall. Between the wall, but metaphorically it's used to denote a period between two times. So moments sublime with intervals hilarious. Between two times there was hilarity. I was part of life at last, and in the midst of the excitement I discovered liquor. I forgot the strong warnings and the prejudices of my people concerning drink. Prejudices of my people, obviously his family was against drinking. In time we sailed for Over There, and Over There is in quotes because it's the name of a song. It was a popular song in America, and the topic of it was about going over to Europe to fight in a war. Over there, send the word to beware, that the Yanks are coming, and we won't be back till it's over there. So it was a propaganda song to try and stir Americans up to. The story behind it is that it was to fulfill a promise made to England to get the Americans involved if England would give Palestine to the Zionists. And so that song was created in order to help to fulfill that promise that was made to England. Now, I was very lonely and again turned to alcohol. In time we sailed for Over There. I was very lonely and in time turned to alcohol. We landed in England. I visited Winchester Cathedral in the town of Winchester, England. Many American towns are named after that town. Much moved, I wandered outside. My attention was caught by a doggerel on an old tombstone. Now, a doggerel is a rhyme in which the words are mispronounced by taking the accent off of one syllable, putting on the wrong syllable. And this is it's a rhyme where that's used to get all the words to fit in to the rhythm of the poem. And it's generally on some unimportant topic. Here lies a Hampshire grenadier. I suppose you know someone that throws grenades. Grenades used to be a special squad or corps of Army Corps Division, Brigade, Regiment, Battalion, Company. I'll use the word division, not the Army sense. A group of people that threw grenades as opposed to having, say, rifles or other weapons. That was their principal job, was to throw the grenades. And this is an old-time, hundreds of years ago, warfare. They were called grenadiers. Here lies a Hampshire grenadier. Hampshire, now we have New Hampshire in America, but Hampshire, it's named after Hampshire in England, Hampshire. Here lies a Hampshire grenadier who caught his death drinking cold small beer. A good soldier is ne'er forgot, whether he dieth by a musket or pot. So small beer means weak beer. A pot was a tankard. It's like a big mug that holds 2 quarts. There's a mug holding 2 quarts of ale or beer, and it was passed around the table or the room, and everybody took a sip out of it, or a guzzle, or a chug-a-lug. Ominous warning, which I failed to heed. Now, heed means to listen to and obey. Ominous comes from the word omen, which means a foretelling, telling the future before it happens. An omen. So ominous, which means telling the future. 22 and a veteran of foreign wars, I went home at last. I fancied myself a leader, for had not the men of my battery given me a special token of appreciation? Now, you've heard of beating, battery, battalion, beat. A battery is another military grouping. I don't know if it's used anymore. It's also, well, I don't know enough about it. It also has other applications in military. I think it's a fortification, or I think it's a fortification. They call it a battery also. In other words, I'm saying this because we're used to thinking battery as an electrical cell. That's not what this is about, obviously. Men of my battery, I mean, he has that wouldn't make any sense. Had given him a special token of appreciation. Now he says he fancied himself a leader. Fancy is, they took the word fantasy and shortened it. I fantasied myself a leader. And it comes from the Greek word that means to appear. It's kind of like, it's close to the word light. So fantasy was to make something appear in your imagination. That was page 1. We're going to skip on to page 2 because there's no other page between page 1 and page 2. I took a night law course and obtained employment as an investigator for a surety company. Okay, a surety company, it's called a bonding company. You pay them money, and then if someone flubs, then they pay out some money for that. I was working in the company, and we were paying this bonding company so we could say we were bonded. And it turns out he didn't even, the guy was just taking the money. He didn't even give us a contract. He didn't even register us with the main office, because something happened and we needed to pay, and he refused to pay. I asked to see the contract. He couldn't show it to me. The drive for success was on. I'd proved to the world I was important. My work took me about Wall Street, and little by little, around Wall Street, and little by little I became interested in the market. Many people lost money, but some became very rich. Why not I? I studied economics and business as well as law. Potential alcoholic that I was, I nearly failed my law course. At one of the finals, I was too drunk to think or write. Now that word drunk is an incorrect past participle of the word to drink. I was too drunken. It should be drunken. I was too drunken. I nearly failed my law course. I was too drunken to think or write. Though my drinking was not yet continuous, continuous means non-stop. Continual means a little bit and stop, and a little bit and stop, and that's continual, continual. But continuous means non-stop. It disturbed my wife. We had long talks when I would still her forebodings by telling her that men of genius conceived their best projects when drunken, that the most majestic constructions of philosophic thought were so derived. Okay, he would still her forebodings. Still, of course, it means he'd make them to stop. For means before the future. Bode means to give a message. So she was inwardly, inside herself, she felt, or by observing his behavior, let's say, that's outside of herself, she felt like she was seeing a future coming, and he made that process to become still so that it wasn't happening anymore. I would still her forebodings. And he says, the most majestic constructions of philosophic thought were so derived. A D means from, and revo means stream. So this is another metaphor. Obviously, they're not taking it out of the stream, but there's a comparison to us taking something out of a stream. They're not literally taking anything out of a stream, but so derived is a metaphor. It doesn't really mean, what it really means is taking something out of a stream. By the time I had completed the course, I knew the law was not for me, or, being a lawyer was not for me. The inviting maelstrom of Wall Street had me in its grip. Now, maelstrom was the name of a whirlpool off the coast of Norway, which had a reputation of being deadly, a deadly whirlpool. So the maelstrom, the inviting maelstrom of Wall Street is a very threatening word to be used for Wall Street, had me in its grip. And Wall Street is called that because the governor of New Amsterdam wanted to separate the Jews from the Dutch, and he put up a wall. So that's this Wall Street ran along that wall, and that's how it got the name. Peter Stuyvesant, he had his leg shot off in a war, and when he came to New Amsterdam, it was filthy there. He got it all cleaned up. I mean, the people were slobs. You know, the whole town was just, there was animals in the street and they were dirtying up. Anyway, that's irrelevant. It's too late now. I've already done said it. Business and financial leaders were my heroes. Out of this alloy of drink and speculation, this is very poetic writing, out of this alloy of drink and speculation, I commenced to forge the weapon that would one day turn in its flight like a boomerang and all but cut me to ribbons. All but, it would do all but cut me to ribbons. It would do every bad thing, but it wouldn't quite cut me to ribbons, but it would do every other thing bad but that. All but cut me to ribbons. This alloy of drink and speculation. Of course, an alloy is a mixture of two metals. Here we're using another metaphor. There wasn't really, drink and speculation aren't metals, so it's a comparison. Out of this alloy of drink and speculation, I began to forge, like a blacksmith makes a weapon on the anvil by sticking the metal into the fire. He's forging, or that's done with furnaces. I don't even know how manufacturing is done anymore, but then the next step was there was these mass production furnaces, I suppose. The weapon that one day would turn in its flight like a boomerang. A boomerang, most people know, is a weapon used in hunting by the Aborigines in Australia. It's thrown and it takes a path where it goes out and it comes back. And if you're good, they can hit like small game by throwing the boomerang, and that's how they hunt. But the point is, he's saying that he made a boomerang and it came back and hit himself with it. He made this weapon, but the weapon was like a boomerang and it came back, and he wasn't a good thrower, so it came back and hit him instead of the small game. So we just have a little ways to go in this particular, up to finish page 2. All but coming to ribbons. Living modestly, my wife and I saved $1,000. Now that, you multiply that by approximately 5 to 8, so that's 5 to 8,000 maybe, or so. It went into certain securities, then cheap, and rather unpopular. So then, at that time, then, the securities were cheap. I rightly imagined that they would someday have a great rise. I failed to persuade my broker friends to send me out looking over factories and managements, but my wife and I decided to go anyway, looking over factories and managements. Business stuff I don't know anything about what he's talking about. I had developed a theory that most people, I think that he was going to, they had these stocks and they were based on factories. The success of the stock would depend on how well the factory and the management was operating. So they were going to look at that so they would be better, more correct in their decisions in stockbroking. But my wife and I decided to go anyway. I had developed a theory that most people lost money in stocks through ignorance of markets. So they were trying to get educated as to what the businesses were that the stocks represented. I discovered many more reasons later on why most people lost money. We gave up our positions, so their positions, that means I guess they both had jobs, and off we roared on a motorcycle, the sidecar stuffed with tent, blankets, a change of clothes, and 3 huge volumes of a financial reference service. Our friends thought a lunacy commission should be appointed. Lunacy comes from the word luna, which means moon, because people used to go well, they still do. The cops, they have statistics on this, that people tend to go, not every individual, but if you have a mass of people, there's more of them will go nuts during the full moon than the number that goes nuts at other times. And this is connected with the coagulation of the blood. The blood's thinner or thicker or something like that during a full moon. Perhaps they were right, that a lunacy commission should be appointed, meaning this is like a little humor, like you can figure it out. It'll take me too long to figure out how to say it. I had some success at speculation. Speculation means speculate means make a risky decision about investing. So we had a little money, but we once worked on a farm for a month to avoid drawing our small capital. Capital means investment money. And I know a lot of you know this already, but some people don't. I live in Appalachia. A lot of these people, they can't even read. Okay? That was the last honest manual labor on my part for many a day. I'm serious. I literally can't read. We covered the whole eastern United States in a year. At the end of it, my reports to Wall Street I forgot to look that one up. Pro means in front of or forward. Procured me a position there and the use of a large expense account. The exercise of an option, that's a stockbroking trick. It's one of the many things that they do to manipulate money. The exercise of an option brought in more money, leaving us with a profit of several $1,000s for that year. That's all for now, kids. Thanks for listening.